You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo for another edition of this week's Long Island News, the news show that brings you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. And now we're grateful as always to have back on the show today Newsday's Albany Bureau Chief, Yancey Roy. Thanks for joining us, and I know this is busy time for you, no doubt, and with everything going on, but I'm so glad that we can get you
to be with you.
You can explain to us just what the heck is going on, because
there's a lot of moving pieces, and we know you're busy every year around budget time, primary season, and the end of session. But then again, every decade there's another busy period on the Capitol beat, which is redistricting. So everyone's anticipating the special master. What will he decide? What will that mean for representation and a lot of political futures going forward? So can you let us know kind of where we stand? Or actually, before we get to the current, can you just give a little bit of historical context and lay out, kind of how we got here real quick?
Sure. It's redistricting happens every 10 years. Every state has to do it because of the census, because generally speaking, all your districts across the country in Congress and then across your state in the legislature have to represent roughly the same number of people. So in Congress, if you lose population, if you win population, you might gain seats. New York this time has lost a seat. And so that's part of the scramble going on with Congress. We have to go from 27 seats to 26. The Democrats, the process of drawing new lines is controlled by the state legislature, which is now overwhelmingly Democratic. The legislature approved a new map in the very end of January. I think Governor Hochul signed it maybe around the 1st of February, which, to probably no political surprise, helped Democrats through the districts in a way that would possibly boost Democratic numbers from the New York congressional delegation. This was not unlike what you saw in red-controlled states, Republican-controlled states, where they have drawn lines to help Republicans. But the thing about it is, you can't just have complete free reign to draw the lines the way you want. There are some federal guidelines, there are some federal guardrails to protect against gerrymandering, also to protect minority voting rights. The short story is that Republicans filed suit on a couple of bases about the process, and essentially that the lines were gerrymandered because it is sought to increase Democratic numbers by about 3 and reduce Republican numbers by about 4. We would have gone from a delegation that was 19 Democrat and 18 Republican to roughly 22 Democrat and Republican, based solely on enrollment and voting in the last election. So where we've gotten to is the state's highest court has ruled that map unconstitutional, threw it back to the courts. The courts appointed what was supposed to be a neutral special master to redraw new lines. Those lines came out on Monday. It definitely was more competitive than the earlier map. Since then, there's been hundreds, if not more, of comments about those maps. And as we sit here on Friday, the judge in the case is he says he wants to finalize those maps probably today. The question is, will he just sign off on what the special master proposed on Monday, or will he make any adjustments based on the comments he's received in the 3 days since? Now, yes. I think some people are expecting, we might see big changes in the maps. Frankly, as we sit here, I'm not expecting big changes, simply because all he's had is like 3 days to review any of these. And that's not a lot of time to redraw things, but
of course.
We'll see.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. The reporting that I've been following does seem to match, what you're seeing there, you and your colleagues from Newsday, that it looks like, people expect the lines to be pretty similar. And they really, the input process, I know there was a hearing that some people, if they could get to Steuben County, were able to attend and give their input, but that is not an easy feat for most. And then even the process to give input afterwards was only a few days, and it was mostly by email, it seems. So don't know how they were able to get through all of those, kind of considerations that were raised. So we'll get into now, I guess, those maps, overall. But you raised on a point that I know is being mentioned by people like Representative Jeffries, Hakeem Jeffries, the DCCC, in terms of this communities of interest consideration. Is there something to that in terms of legally having to follow that? Could that hold the works up any bit, or does that seem to not really be likely the case?
Well, again, speaking broadly, you're not supposed to dilute communities of interest, or especially minorities, so as to dilute minority voting power. Frankly, this is probably something that you've seen in cases more in the South, where it's been alleged that districts were drawn so as to dilute minority representation in some states. So there is a precedent for making that claim and then fighting through it and seeing that the courts, in some cases, overturn maps. But again, you have to make some specific, detailed mathematical claims about that. And where we are right now is, I don't know. I've not seen the objections that have been thrown in there. Did they make specific claims that can be backed up? One other thing we should say is that folks are already saying that if the judge signs the lines today with no changes from the special masters, so there's a potential that all of this could still be kind of volatile even after today. That folks are expecting some finalization today, but who knows? Maybe another lawsuit could be filed.
Oh boy. Okay, yeah, because that's what I had seen a little bit insinuated. People talking about maybe civil rights suits and other things. Potentially. I know even not exactly related to that, but more in terms of the primary dates. I think the League of Women Voters, some advocacy groups are trying to get those to kind of come in line the same day. So still moving pieces, but it seems like for all intents and purposes, we should expect whenever this announcement does come by Carnegie Mellon's Servas, again, the special master, as the term has, been kind of said over and over again, which is an interesting term to begin with. That's going to be, I guess, what we see today. So let's get into that. Obviously, we have the congressional lines here on the island. We have Zeldin's seat, which obviously will be vacated as he runs for governor. You have Andrew Garbarino's seat, which he'll continue to run for, it seems. You have Congressman Swazi's seat also being vacated for him to run on the Democratic line. And then you have Congress member Rice's seat, which is also being vacated. So what are the impacts on those local candidates? And then obviously that leads to what are the implications for the U.S. House overall, I guess, with the state delegation too? One
of the changes that you would see if these new lines that we saw on Monday stay as is, for the Long Island delegation, one of the interesting things is back in January, when the legislature had come up with its proposals for districts, the one that caught everyone's eye was New York 3, Tom Swazi's district, because the way that the legislature wanted to do it was make it a quote unquote Sound Shore district, kind of looping around the entire Long Island Sound, running from the western end of Suffolk County through Nassau, Queens, and then all up through those Westchester communities such as Rye, which would have been A, made it a heavily Democratic district, B, open it up to competition from Westchester County. State Senator Alessandra Biaggi immediately jumped into the race and said she could win it. And it was looking like I forget what the number was, like 5-person field. And who knows in a 5-person field, someone can easily win that with 25% of the vote. But the special master redrew that district to keep it contained primarily in Nassau County, with a little bit of Suffolk and a little bit of Queens and no Westchester. And, some candidates such as, say, Robert Zimmerman, John Kamen, Josh Lafazan immediately said, Melanie DeRigo immediately said they're still running in 3. We didn't hear anything from Biaggi. I think there are, not just her, but there are other candidates who are out there, didn't say anything on Monday. I think they're kind of waiting until the finalization of these maps to say one way or another whether they're in. And that might be the case in state Senate districts as well. It's not just Congress that's redrawn, it's state Senate.
Okay. Of course. And
to make the transition over to there's some noticeable things there. One of them being that the special master redid what we call State Senate District 2, such as that as of right now, you would have two incumbents from Long Island who reside in that district. Mario Matera, a Republican, yep, and Jim Gorin, a Democrat. Now, Gorin could choose to run in 2, or he could choose to run in District 5. He could run in 5 and then win that district, and then there's a window where you eventually have to move into that district.
Yes.
A lot of it's Huntington. Mm-hmm. Right now, he doesn't technically reside in what we call District 5.
Okay,
he can decide not to run at all as well.
Yeah, of course, like we see with Senator Boyle and other folks, deciding not to get into these races. But, you raised, I think, an important point there and distinction, that probably should be laid out to listeners, that as opposed to congressional candidates where they don't have to legally live within the confines of the district as constructed, going forward, the state senators do, assembly as well, but they do have, like you said, this kind of grace period to decide, will they move into district, or like you said, will they have to now run into the district that they've been drawn into? And that leads us to that kind of who's drawn in, who's drawn out, who's now, were allies and now might be enemies, and primaries they didn't exactly expect. So, there still should be, right, the 9 Long Island seats, that seat that was going to maybe, Sanders, I thought was going to take a little bit of Long Island. That's kind of been, canceled out. And then just the other takeaways, I know, is it correct that the reporting was that Latino district majority kind of has not really come into fruition, but there is seemingly a new majority-minority district. Is that accurate?
State Senate District 6, which is Kevin Thomas out of Levittown. The special master's proposal would make State Senate District 6 a majority-minority district, which in plain terms means that white residents don't represent 50% or more. Not only would it be a first, but for Democrats, it would also make Kevin Thomas's run for re-election probably safer, because as he's looking at it now, that district, off the top of my head, I want to say it's at least 60% Democratic. So that would be a lot safer for him. And then the proposal back in January was to make that a Hispanic plurality district by including a lot of Brentwood, and wouldn't make up a majority of that district, but they would make up a plurality, meaning they would be the biggest group of voters, even though they're not 50%. Well, Understood. That's all changed under the new plan. State Senate District 3 has been redrawn as we speak to actually be a very Republican district. And that the impact of that is to make Senate District 4 a kind of a toss-up. In January was that 3 was going to be a toss-up district with a plurality of Hispanics, and 4 would be a very safe Republican district. Now, what we're looking at is 3 is very strong Republican and 4 is more of a toss-up. And the interesting thing there is that an incumbent, Alexis Wyke, has been representing 3, but she resides in Sayville, which now sits in District 4. And that's more of a toss-up, and it'll be interesting to see how that race goes. Senate District 3, now a strong Republican district. Dean Murray, a former assemblyman, had declared for that district. What had looked like might be a tough fight way back when, if it stays as it is, that's a strong Republican district. His chances of winning that district would go up considerably. Yeah,
and that raises the point that it doesn't obviously just impact the incumbents, but it obviously impacts who's, deciding to run, and now as petitioning is probably going to start today for the folks, who are trying to get into new offices. The threshold has been lowered, so that does open the door basically to more people potentially, I guess, jumping in and just seeing what can happen. And even believe some of the assembly members where it's really no risk, if they lose the primary, they can still run for their own assembly seats. At least that's my understanding. So point is, that there are a lot of things there at play, and we'll certainly be watching that. Just quickly, in the last couple of moments we have you, I just want to touch base, kind of, rapid fire on a few of these. The assembly maps legal challenge, I know that was handled separately. Is that now dead, or is that still playing out?
Well, the congressional and Senate districts were declared illegal. The assemblies were not.
Exactly.
And so the issue is that the assembly primaries would still stay in January, and along with the statewide races such as governor, attorney general, et cetera.
Yeah, June.
The League of Women Voters and others are trying to they have filed a lawsuit to try to make one unified primary and put it all in August. The argument among them is that it would save taxpayers money to just have one primary. It would help turnout to have just one primary. We'll see where that lawsuit goes because, frankly, I don't know. I mean, the idea of the Senate district, you're trying to make the assembly races part of the new primary, even when they were never declared illegal in the first place. So I don't know that you'd have much grounds for that.
Of course, and there was a different dynamic. Some Republicans were more involved in that process, at least it seemed to say, than maybe in the Senate and the congressional. So, okay, certainly, I know you have a lot to report on there. We'll be following that very closely. We encourage everyone always to do that with Newsday, but especially now. But it does seem that as of now, we can tell folks pretty confidently, right? June 28th will be the governor and also the assemblies. And then the congressional will be in August, looks like the 23rd, right? Congressional and state Senate?
That's right. Okay,
so that's the main thing to keep focused on, folks. I know it gets complicated. We don't want to see, voter turnout drop. So just, stay an eye on that. And, we'll keep reminding folks about that. Just in those last few minutes we have here, Yancy, has anything really changed? It doesn't seem like in terms of the governor's race, final primary push. You still have Hochul as the dominant front runner, Suozzi and Williams trying to gain traction. And you still have Zeldin and Esposito leading the Republican pack, but Giuliani, Wilson, and Nagasterino, trying to, still carve out their lane. Is that accurate still?
The wild card factor here is it is expected to be a low turnout primary, and sometimes those are hard to predict.
True.
That's when your surprises can happen more likely in low turnout primaries than in high turnout primaries. That low turnout primaries, generally speaking, are more prone to surprises.
Exactly, like you said. So we'll certainly see what those may be, in a little time. And just lastly, with the session ending, like I said, only in a few session days, there are some priorities that were on the table, and especially in light of the white supremacist mass murder on the east side of Buffalo that tragically occurred last weekend. Gun control is at the forefront. Additionally, reproductive rights as a campaign issue in light of the Supreme Court's draft leak. That seems to be, the main drum that's going to be beat, right, and from both sides, I guess, of the aisle this session.
Yeah. Gun proposals, abortion rights, even maybe the proposal for a constitutional amendment to sort of codify, if you will, abortion rights as outlined by Roe v. Wade. And also, we haven't mentioned this yet, but kind of a late starter, and it's kind of out there now, is that the Assembly, after some hesitation, says it will now pass what's called the Adult Survivors Act.
Yes.
Which is modeled after the Child Victims Act, which opened a 1-year window to file lawsuits about sexual abuse that had been previously barred by time limitations, statute of limitations. Now, what they're looking at is, and that had been open for people where the abuse had occurred to them when they were under 18. Now, this law would open it to people who were adults. Abuse claims that happened to you allegedly when you were an adult, because those were barred under the old one. Child Victims Act. This would be the Adult Survivors Act. The Assembly had been the holdup. They say they will pass it. Governor Hochul says she will sign it. 6 months after it's signed, a 1-year window would open up for civil lawsuits about sexual abuse.
Okay, so that's obviously a big, again, major policy, decision if it goes through.
10,000 claims were filed under the Child Victims Act.
Wow.
So what we would see under an Adult Survivors Act.
Wow.
Yes, of course. And there's obviously the lieutenant governor's race, too, which has been, obviously tumultuous after the, Brian Benjamin federal charges debacle. You have Lieutenant Governor Delgado, who I don't know still technically if he is the lieutenant governor. That's a whole other thing that we don't have probably too much time for. With also you have the candidates Chila running with Jumaane Williams and Reyna running with Tom Suozzi. So Yancy, thank you as always. Your time is invaluable, and our listeners always appreciate the lessons and getting people up to speed on what we need to know. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I always know more after we talk to you than I did going in. Thank you very much.
Sure, guys.
And now we're excited to welcome our next guest to the show for the first time and live in studio with us, the Long Island Association's Vice President of Government Affairs and Communications, Stacey Sikes. Well, the Long Island Association is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan business organization that amplifies the voice of the business community in Nassau and Suffolk counties. As Long Island's Chamber of Commerce, they work to increase economic viability and provide regional leadership to ensure a bright future for Long Island. Thanks for joining us today.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're glad that you're with us. I know you just came over from our friends across the street over at Hofstra, so always happy to share a stage with them and promote Long Island's businesses and the business community and the community at large out here. So let's start our conversation by, if you could, briefly unpacking the general mission and the services of the Long Island Association a bit further.
Sure. So again, thanks for having me. I started at the LIA in July of 2021, so not even a year yet. And before that, as John mentioned, I was at Hofstra University for 6 years, where I served. My last position was the Executive Dean of Entrepreneurship and Business Development. A big title, I know. I oversaw all the small business programs. We managed a lot of state grants. And before that, I worked in government. So at the LIA, I get to combine my government experience with my business experience. So the Long Island Association was established in 1926. We have been advocating for Long Island's business community for nearly 100 years. We have a diversity of businesses that are part of our membership. They range from startup companies to the largest employers on Long Island and in New York State. And we do a lot of advocacy work. So as the head of government affairs, I handle the Long Island Association's legislative portfolio. And we foster networking for our members. So that's a huge part of what we do. We want to see our businesses grow, and networking and developing relationships with other business owners contributes to that growth.
Of course.
So if you want me to keep going?
I mean, I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more of it. And I want to definitely get into those priorities, overall that you have there. And I know a lot of legislative portfolio items, especially as the New York State session comes to a wrap here. We were just talking with Newsday's Albany Bureau Chief Yancey Roy about what redistricting will mean for the island. But obviously there's a lot of things at play, I'm sure, in your guys' kind of portfolio, like you said. But I guess, can we start maybe, before we get there, in terms of the role of colleges like Nassau Community College and also Hofstra University and workforce development for the businesses out here on Long Island in a general sense?
So, yeah, I mean, coming from Hofstra, I know, first of all, it's a priority of the Long Island Association to keep young people here. We want all of the students who we educate at Hofstra University, Stony Brook University, New York Institute of Technology, Long Island University, now Malloy University and St. Joseph's University. We want all of them to stay on Long Island. And what we're trying to do is make Long Island more affordable and address our high cost of living to enable students to stay here. So that includes housing and making sure they have housing options, rental, home ownership. We want it to be attainable for young people. They need childcare in order to continue in their careers and be successful. Transportation is a part of it. This year we have 2 groundbreaking, once-in-a-generation transportation projects opening that will better connect Long Island to New York City, and that's the Third Track and the East Side Access. So, So we're looking at Long Island's affordability. So there's such incredible talent at our colleges and universities, including Nassau Community College, and we want to make sure that they stay on Long Island. And it's an amazing pipeline for the research for the employers on Long Island as well. There are so many different academic programs on Long Island. We have a highly educated population. So the Long Island Association has on our board, we have the colleges and universities, but we also have the employers. So you mentioned workforce development, and we're making those connections between the students and the larger employers as well.
So do you have mixers with the businesses and the students?
So I will mention that we had some interns last semester, and one of my interns was a student at Stony Brook University who's also involved in the radio station here, Isha Butt.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
nice.
she was amazing. She actually helped. We just launched a podcast. So the president and CEO of the Long Island Association's name is Matt Cohen. And he has a podcast called Long Island's Future. I'll give it a plug. The next episode is coming out soon, and it's actually going to focus on something we're talking about now, young professionals on Long Island and what it will take to keep them here. And he talks to a few young professionals on this episode. And Isha actually last semester helped us develop the outline for this podcast using her experience at Nassau Community College. So
full circle.
Yes.
Yep.
So it was great to work with her. And we also have a young professionals committee at the LIA, which helps to develop the rising stars at many of the leading businesses on Long Island. So we provide them with networking opportunities. We talk to them about different issues on Long Island. So they are prepared to take the reins and be our leaders. And honestly, we're seeing a lot of millennials who are becoming leaders on Long Island and are business leaders. And it's great to see that energy and work with them on making Long Island, keeping Long Island the wonderful place that it is.
Of course. That is obviously the goal of, I think, all of our listeners. Certainly, like you said, the community colleges, but also the BOCES, knowing that obviously you have doctoral programs at universities on the island. We also have just credentialing programs for different people trying to get into different fields that, certainly can make a difference. So we certainly encourage people to check those out here at Community College of Nassau, but also, Suffolk and anywhere else that you might be interested in trying to get maybe a little more experience and expertise to help you in the workforce and, maybe be one of the businesses, be employed by one of the businesses by LIA. So, appreciate that kind of to start, Stacey. So let's maybe get into what we've also been talking about, a lot of elected officials and a lot of other policymakers and folks, the pandemic response for Long Island businesses. We all know certainly businesses have dealt with, very unique times the last few years here between remote work, between, masking, trying to keep people employed. So programs like PPP. What is LIA's just general, thoughts on kind of where we've been and where we've come in this process overall?
Sure. So the Long Island Association is a leading advocate for Long Island's economic recovery from the pandemic. During the pandemic, we worked with Newsday to get information out to businesses on the PPP, the COVID EIDL loans, and other programs to support businesses during this devastating time for them. Our lives really are forever changed by the pandemic, including how we operate our businesses, how our children learn, how we receive health care. And the LIA is continuing to support efforts to revitalize our economy and mitigate the negative impacts. Businesses right now are still facing economic uncertainty with skyrocketing fuel costs, supply chain issues, which all goes in the cost of goods and what makes it to our shelf. So we're continuing to have events and get information out to small businesses. We're continuing to advocate for them. We recently, the president and CEO, Matt Cohen, recently sent a letter to congressional leadership in Washington urging them to redirect funding for the COVID EIDL program because the SBA ended this program when there were some pending applications that were waiting to be considered to see if they could get more money or if their application could be reconsidered. So we're continuing to support our small business sector that are still navigating COVID. Honestly, this community is resilient. I mean, it's here.
That's for sure.
We've been dealing with COVID for 2 years.
Yep.
The latest job numbers that came out from the New York State Department of Labor are encouraging. We're continuing to add jobs. Our tourism sector is doing much better, which was basically shut down. So they were shut down. So there are bright spots, but I really think it's because of those business owners and small business owners who are resilient, they're creative, they know how to manage their businesses through this crisis now, and I would say this new normal.
Yeah, they went into the survival mode, though, for a long time. They, you know, not knowing what to do. What am I going to do tomorrow when, something happened? I think one of the greatest things that a lot of local municipalities did was when the restaurants started to put their tables outside, they said they were going to forego the permit prices. And, that was a tangible help.
Right.
And now we see as the virus is never going to go away. I think we're going to be dealing with this. But you see restaurants now using that more, even ones that didn't do such a large amount of it, now they're saying, hey, this is people want to eat outside. They
al fresco everywhere. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, again, now that we're over 2 years into this, businesses know how to manage it. They know how to keep their employees safe. They know how to keep their customers safe. They know it's you're right. It's here, and our economy has to stay open.
I think one of the scary things, though, now it's here, but it seems to have changed. In the last 3 days, I've heard of 3 people that I know that tested positive. Now, they're not deathly ill like when it first came out. So it's got a different face now.
Yeah.
People may tend to treat it not as seriously because people aren't being taken to the hospital. It's kind of weird. It seems to me we're almost like in the middle area.
There's a lot of unknowns.
Right.
Certainly we've seen, but this still is new territory in terms of what kind of comes next. All we can kind of do is take it day by day. And I think Stacey, you raised the point of resiliency. No one would, I think, doubt what that has looked like in terms of first responders, in terms of business community, and also the nonprofit service providers, etc. But also with that, I think, is adaptation and just people being able to just kind of roll with the punches and just do whatever they can and come together as a community, business community, like I said, the education community, etc. To just try to make the best out of again, unique situations. So to that point, and I know you touched on a couple of other points we'll probably jump back to, Stacey, but in terms of the federal, the state, the county and town funding for programs like the one Bill kind of raised, some of the ones you had mentioned, where does that stand? Is most of that exhausted now? And did that make I think enough of the impact that we needed to see? Because I know there was things also like the infrastructure package at the federal level, and then there was also Governor Hochul came out after the state budget to the island, had a event with, I believe, you folks over at LIA and other electeds about the roads and stuff. So where does I guess the funding what does it look like to you guys? And from what you're hearing from businesses? So
the COVID EIDL loans right now are done. Where that funding is exhausted. The restaurant revitalization program from the SBA is also exhausted. We've advocated so the PPP EIDL restaurant recovery has helped thousands of businesses on Long Island. But there's still need for this money. So the Long Island Association has advocated that Congress look for opportunities to potentially redirect funding to replenish those programs. In terms of some other programs that were approved as part of the fiscal year 2023 state budget, there are some middle class tax cuts that are going to be accelerated. There's some additional property tax relief. There's also some new tax cuts for small businesses that will help. And there was also a grant fund for businesses that I think will go to seed funding for new companies. But we're on that. We're waiting to see what the process will be for small businesses. New York State also has something called the Small Business Recovery Program that is for businesses that experience revenue losses during COVID. So there's still money left in that program. Those grants are still available.
That's kind of everybody, isn't it?
So there's certain eligibility requirements. So, you have to show a revenue loss. It's like a certain percentage, and your business has to have, a certain amount of revenues. But this program is still there. And there's also resources at the colleges and universities to help if a business owner they are doing a million things.
Of course,
it's a lot for them to put together.
24/7 job.
Take the time out to do these application packages. They're probably doing it in the middle of the night. So there are resources that are available at the colleges and universities to help businesses, if they're interested, they want to see if they're eligible for programs like the Small Business Recovery Program to help put together their application.
So what would you do? Just get in touch with somebody at a college?
So we have this on our website.
Oh, there you go.
If you go to longislandassociation.org, we have a resources for business page, which has links to any type of support for businesses. So we have COVID policies. If a business wants to know, like, what's the latest quarantine guidance for my employees?
Right.
Where do I get tests? That's up there. Grants and loans, so the Small Business Recovery Program. Support for minority and women and veteran-owned businesses. There are certain certifications that they could obtain from New York State, which could help them in contracting and getting contracts. We also have we've actually been very involved in the offshore wind industry. It's a brand new industry coming to Long Island. There's going to be supply chain opportunities for businesses that are part of this industry. So that's also on our website, and we have several other categories. But I want to tell businesses, check it out, longislandassociation.org. Click on resources for businesses. It's updated weekly, I think.
Wow.
Okay, and we can share that out as well, and certainly encourage people to look that over because, like you said, it can certainly be a bit harrowing. A lot of folks, they have you see these commercials where, they know how to run whatever business. They're a carpenter, they're a florist, but that doesn't mean that they're an accountant. That doesn't mean that they know how to navigate, grant writing and all these other kind of more complex processes that they don't have to deal with on a regular basis. So between that and, unfortunately seeing a lot of the fraudulent claims that were filed, but thankfully are getting weeded out, there's obviously a lot, that could be benefited from, talking to someone who's, a little more professional and does this on a more routine kind of basis. So definitely take that again into consideration. And, I guess, we'll talk about infrastructure then maybe now a little bit because you raised, the wind kind of infrastructure project that, we do see kind of developing here off the coast of Long Island. But like you mentioned, too, we had talked with Kathy Rinaldi from LIRR recently, and we have the third track expansion, obviously, that should be finalized under her tenure, and additionally, the east side access to get people into Grand Central. She was saying, and we were talking about how hopefully that can drive more local tourism down to our region. People want to go out to the Hamptons, maybe from, the North Counties of Westchester, or get to an Islanders game or something like that. So what do you guys think? Where do we see, I guess, Long Island infrastructure, kind of the state of it with the roads, again, MTA, LIRR, NICE, and wind power, I guess?
Yeah, so I'll start with the transit. It really is an exciting year, a historic year for transit on Long Island. We'll be able to get into New York City, hopefully by the end of the year. The governor has said it's going to launch by the end of the year. We recently had Jano Lieber, the head of the MTA, say it's going to launch by the end of the year, speak to our membership. So it's going to make the commute into New York City a lot easier. And it will also help Long Island's economy because maybe we'll get some more reverse commuters coming to work on Long Island. And it's going to, we're connected to New York City. We're interdependent on each other, and our economies can benefit each other. So if New York City's economy is strong, so is Long Island's, and vice versa. So,
of course.
So the east side access is really exciting. So that will have a transit connection from the Long Island Railroad to Grand Central Terminal. With the third track, that's also exciting. That will increase ridership, hopefully, and have more trains that are coming to Long Island. So we advocated for funding from the federal infrastructure bill, which definitely supported the state's Department of Transportation budget in FY 2023, which will have some more funding for roads. We've all been impacted by those potholes. There's going to be major road repaving projects that the state will do on Long Island, hundreds of miles of roads. So that will be happening soon. Yep.
Pave our potholes.
Yep.
I think
exactly.
one of the big questions is there anything like lined up to try to make sure it doesn't get to this, I mean, this didn't happen overnight, the potholes and the look at the parkway. And I mean, you can just pick any road you want. And they've deteriorated to the point of it's crazy. Is there anything in the book there to kind of push against this happening again? Because we're going to fix them now, And in 20 years, we'll be having this same conversation.
Yeah, there just needs to be a stream of funding.
A consistent stream.
Right.
That, I mean, we learned from the town of Oyster Bay supervisor that to do a mile of road cost $1 million. I mean, we were stunned, but when you take into consideration the equipment, the manpower, the disruption to the traffic and all those things, okay, but it's so you're going to do how many miles of road?
Yeah, I mean, the question would be if you did, just hypothetically, $100,000 every 2 years versus $1 million every 10 years, would the difference bear out to taxpayers and to, people who use our roads? That is the question, of course, we'll see. But I mean, I guess it is a good thing that the funding is there for the moment, that at least this can be done, for the level that it is. So I guess if you have more thoughts about the roads, of course, Stacey, we're open to those. But, I know you were talking about transit. And one thing we talked again about with Catherine Rinaldi, head of the LIRR, was specifically transit-oriented development, which seems to be a priority of, I believe, LIAs. And I know seems to have gotten some pushback, though, in terms of being kind of bundled with the ADU issue to the state budget. A lot of Long Island legislators saw, both, maybe one more than the other, as, kind of a concern to zoning and things like that. But at the same time, as, Ms. Rinaldi had stated, we need to drive people to come back to offices. And, the idea was to, cut down on maybe some of that road abuse and use by having people use the rail system. So what are the thoughts, I guess, on that process still?
So we support at the Long Island Association transit-oriented development. It makes sense because they're clustered in downtown areas. They help bring in businesses to downtown areas when you have people living near the train station, and it creates walkable communities. So there's a few examples of this happening on Long Island now. The Ronkonkoma Hub, I was actually involved in that project when I worked for the town of Brookhaven. Now I'm advocating for it as the vice president of the LIA. So you drive by the Ronkonkoma station and you'll see it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's right next to the train station. There's another proposed development near the Ronkonkoma train station and MacArthur Airport, which is the Midway project. And that doesn't have residential, but it has, the proposal includes a convention center and life sciences space, which is also critical to our economy to make sure that there's space for technology-based companies that will turbocharge our economy. We recently had an event for young professionals in Lindenhurst. TriTech Development built something called The Well. We gave a tour to our Young Professionals Committee and then went to a nearby brewery and grabbed a drink and listened to some music. So, and it really supported the businesses in Lindenhurst during COVID. And there are other examples throughout Long Island, Patchogue, Wyandanch, Westbury, where Mineola, where, these residential developments near train station spurs economic growth. And that's what we want to see more of on Long Island.
Well, I used to work in the construction industry, and we've been seeing these plans. You mentioned the East Side Access Project. I've been seeing those plans 20 years ago. I mean, they've been drawing up and figuring out what they're going to do with that for a long time. I guess we would call it our crown jewel only because we're familiar with it, is Farmingdale. And they did exactly what you're talking about. And one of the issues in Farmingdale is actually parking, which I believe the buildings that they put up really didn't care about parking. They put up the buildings and said, this is for transit oriented. So you're going to have that battle. People are not going to. America's got a love affair with the automobile. We always have. They're in general not really willing to give that up. So it's going to be a push-pull.
Of course. But maybe, from families that have 5 cars, the idea of maybe having 2 or 3 and people taking the train, the relative progress of obviously still suburban living out here on the island.
Before we go on, I just want to remind you that you're listening to 90.3 WHPC with this week's Long Island News with Bill McIntyre and Jon Gallo. And we're here with Stacey Sikes from the Long Island Association.
I just wanted to also just move forward and I think mention, as we were just kind of segueing there, into affordable housing, which is kind of the crux of all this, where, like you said, we want to keep talent on the island. We want to spur innovation. We don't want to see people, kind of leave to go to other states. What does the association think? And, obviously, what are they doing in terms of working with, developers and elected officials to really hammer that point home on making, the island a place that everyone can afford to live?
Well, one of our policy priorities, so every year we issue a policy priority guide, which includes all of the initiatives that we are advocating for. And they go to our mission of encouraging a positive business climate on Long Island and making sure our economy is strong. And we do think that there should be diverse housing options, including rental, multifamily, home ownership near downtowns and transit centers like we talked about. And we have an affordability crisis on Long Island.
We shouldn't even be able to use that word.
The housing market is crazy right now. It's hard to imagine that a starter home costs $600,000 on Long Island. And we need to work together as a business community and with our elected officials to figure out how to make it more affordable for young people. Like, how can they even put enough money away to afford a down payment? You're looking at $60, $70, $80, $90, $100,000 for your first home.
Not to mention that most of those students carry some amount of student loan debt.
Right.
Which will stop everyone right in their tracks. One of the things I wanted to mention, there have been a couple of days when I've thought of this, John, and I wanted to mention it to people. The big battle now going on about should we forgive student loans? And, of course, people that already paid theirs are upset that somebody wants to forgive the others and all of that stuff. I think that one of the biggest points that people miss is, let's just say you carry $100,000 worth of student loans and you're working, so you have a job. If your student loan gets forgiven, that may be forgiven by the Department of Education, but the IRS is going to have a different view, and they're going to consider that amount that you got forgiven as income to you for that year.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that's just, the cascading effect of when you do one policy change,
you're basically changing creditors is what you're doing, because now with the Department of Education, you may have one set of rules as far as payback goes. And a lot of times they can be lenient. They'll, forego it. Of course, they're constantly adding interest, which is to their benefit. Nevertheless, if you get hit with that, your tax bill for that year could be astronomical. And now you're going to deal with the IRS, who is not quite as forgiving as the Department of Education. I don't think people take that into consideration. Everybody thinks I need my loans forgiven, and they're all celebrating with the thought that that could happen. Except that the year it happens, you're going to hear a lot of, crying people who didn't realize you're not getting away with anything. You lowered your debt a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure different advocacy groups will, certainly be raising that alarm if that is the case, and we're trying to work with legislators, similar to LIA does with business issues. Mm-hmm. I'm sure other folks will be trying to say, well, hey, we can't have this, policy be passed without these types of considerations, at least, being entertained or thought of. So that's certainly, a relevant thought, Bill, and we'll, follow up on that, going forward. But I guess in terms of, what you were kind of saying maybe before, the relation between these types of organizations like yours, like Long Island Association, Stacey, and elected officials, how important is it to have those good relationships? I know obviously this is a bipartisan organization, and we see changeover every cycle, and we'll probably see some more given what's going to happen with redistricting in the future. So how essential is that to have those good relationships for these types of advocacy groups like yours with the electeds out here?
Yeah, we want to partner with elected officials who will enact policies and support issues that support our economy and support our business community. We are nonpartisan, as you mentioned. It doesn't matter to us if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, working families. It matters to us if you're supporting Long Island's economy. And, I've done in the past 9 months since I've been at the LIA a lot of outreach to elected officials, and I make sure they're aware of different issues that we're supporting that would support our economy and economic development. So those partnerships are critical. It's what I do on a daily basis. Right. And we just want to work with anyone who wants to see Long Island's economy succeed, who support small businesses, and who support a positive business climate here on Long Island.
Of course.
I have a question. Being it's self-serving. I'm in the entertainment. the entertainment business. I play in a few bands. Do you guys consider those small businesses?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What can you do for them?
So I'm glad I have an opening right now to talk about what we're doing for small businesses.
Let her rip.
We actually just recently announced a small business conference at Hofstra University on June 16th. It's a half-day event for small businesses. And anyone who's interested in learning more about the issues that impact small businesses. We have 2 keynote speakers. I should mention this is free, so we are not charging any small businesses to attend. We want them to find out about resources on Long Island to help them. So we have the Atlantic Regional Administrator of the USSBA. Her name's Marlene Citron. She oversees New York, New Jersey, and a few other states and regions. We have the President and CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. They are a Washington, D.C. based organization, and they work with the Long Island African American Chamber of Commerce here on Long Island. They got a grant from the USBA called the Community Navigators Grant to help do more outreach to communities about different resources that can help them succeed. And then we're going to have breakout sessions in between. So we want small businesses to know about how the LAA can support them through our networking and membership. And we send out policy updates to all of our members on our list about different policies that I was talking about that can impact them. We have speakers. So we're having Catherine Rinaldi in a few weeks. We had Jana Weber. We're having the commissioner of the New York State Department of Health next week. And there's also so many other resources at colleges and universities, through governments, private companies even have programs for small businesses. So, and then it's a great way for businesses to interact with each other. And I should mention, there are so many amazing local chambers of commerce on Long Island. And businesses, I encourage, if any small businesses are listening, if you're not part of your local chamber and your local community, they do so much to promote your business and to get the word out there, and and to get information out to residents in the community. So we also want to support their efforts and be supportive of what they're doing. That's the whole. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, I think one of the things that are certainly our listeners and us or me, John is in. He's in public service, so he knows a lot more about the machinations, how the wheels run. Me, I don't know anything. So I ask all the questions.
We learn all day, every day. That's the point of life, right? But no, certainly, like I said, a lot of those moving pieces, and I know you touched on property taxes, which is always a constant issue here on the island. Like I said, one of those other kind of given expenses. But I guess one other issue that we didn't really touch on, which, I guess we probably should because it is so front of mind for a lot of Long Islanders, would be inflation and the supply chain shortages. Obviously, we've heard about gas prices and microchips, but now the most recent thing has been the baby formula issue, which the president did, I believe, issue some form of executive order to try to release, more kind of, basically products downstream into the market. So what's happening there, and what are your members telling you about things like that consumers are, concerned about directly? Yeah,
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's tough right now, So if you just have to go to the pump, if you go on AAA, they show you what the gas prices are today compared to a year ago. A year ago, a gallon of regular was about $3 in New York State, and we all know what it is right now. It's approaching $5. The consumer price index for our region is up 6.3% year over year. It's not an easy time for anyone right now with inflation. The supply chain issues are exacerbating it. But like I said, the business community really is resilient. We're doing what we can to support them. We wanted to make the businesses make sure they know how we're helping and how other organizations are helping, because there are many different organizations on Long Island that are supporting them. And we will get through this, we'll get through this and we'll come out stronger.
Yeah, bottom line, like I said, a little more, resiliency needs to be displayed, but hopefully on the other side, there will be some better times when it comes to those types of price issues. Certainly, there's a lot of other things. I know you touched on it before. given that there has been an issue for some employers to retain their workforce, people have talked about the Great Resignation. That's one side of the issue, but then there's the other side where there probably are more people who are going to develop their own small businesses and, try to, basically whether they're MWBEs or veteran-owned businesses, try to get out there themselves and say, well, maybe there are some incentives. Maybe this is the time for me and my family to try to do this ourselves, whatever it may be. So what would you say to those folks who, are kind of getting out there on a ledge, trying something new for the first time?
It's a really exciting time for you. Use your innovation, be creative. I know that there are, entrepreneurs are risk takers. They are creative. They really can handle curveballs that are thrown their way and utilize the networks that are on Long Island. I mentioned all of them. I'm not going to go through them again. There are so many networks that can help you, that can support you. And we're here for you, and we want you to succeed.
Do you guys, would you help a company navigate the government that they at times have to get through in order to do what they want to do legally?
Yes. One of the things we do for our members is make some introductions that they need to. So, help them point them to the right person and say one of the towns that might be able to give them some answers on different processes that would help them, like if they need permits or whatever. Where do I go for this?
Well, there was a story, and it's anecdotal evidence, and maybe it's not fair to bring it up as a standard thing. But I remember a guy out in Suffolk wanted to start a food truck company, and he had the money, and I think he had the backing, he had everything set up. And he said basically the way that the rules were, he wasn't going to do it because it was just,
too onerous.
It was too much to go up against.
Yeah, there is a lot of red tape. There's red tape. We can help businesses navigate it. That's why we advocate. One of the things we advocate for is reducing the red tape. There's something called the self-certification bill that's pending in the state legislature for Long Island. It would ease the process for building permits for economic development projects and make that go quicker. New York City has it. We want it on Long Island. So we look for opportunities to streamline those processes, make it easier for businesses, kind of demystify the process and cut that red tape.
Yeah, there are quite a few little rules that...
That's why there's, again, great organizations, chambers of commerce, like obviously Long Island Association and all the other small ones that you can just Google your town and Chamber of Commerce. I'd be more than happy to help you, I'm sure. So thank you so much again for all your time, Stacey. We certainly will share some of those events. We know you have one coming up the 24th. This upcoming week with, I believe, the State Commissioner of Health and the other ones that you mentioned as well. So definitely look forward to those, and definitely thank you for your time today.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for coming out and spending some time with us. And if we have any questions now, we know who we can call.
Yes, please reach out, longislandassociation.org. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, where you could get updates on how we're supporting small businesses. And I hope to see you at our conference on June 16th.
Great. Maybe you will.
Look forward to seeing you around. Take care. Have a great weekend.
So we thank you. Thanks, John. Good show. Lots of good information. And the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to move on out of here. We thank you for joining us and remind you that you can catch this week's Long Island News every Friday at 3 o'clock right here on 90.3 WHPC.